Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories, the signal I've always been drawn to abandoned places. There's something about the silence, the way human absence creates its own presence. My camera and I have explored forgotten malls, empty hospitals, and deserted towns across the country. My YouTube channel, Forgotten Spaces, has a modest following of fellow urban explorers who appreciate the melancholic beauty of these places. But nothing prepared me for the Black Rock Radio Tower. It stood alone on a barren hilltop in western Nevada, about 30 miles from the nearest town, a skeletal structure of rusted metal reaching 300 feet into the empty sky. The tower had been decommissioned in 1987, according to my research, after serving as a relay station for military and emergency communications since the 1950s. The small concrete building at its base once housed equipment and occasionally personnel, though it was primarily designed to function remotely. I discovered it while researching forgotten Cold War infrastructure and immediately added it to my exploration list. Remote location, historical significance, minimal security risk, it checked all my boxes. The fact that it was technically on public land made it even better. No trespassing charges if I got caught. The drive from Reno took nearly 3 hours, the last 40 minutes on an unmarked dirt road that my rental car's suspension protested loudly. As I approached, the tower grew from a distant needle to an imposing monolith against the cloudless October sky. No fences surrounded it, just endless sagebrush and the occasional twisted juniper. I parked about 50 yards away and sat for a moment, taking in the scene. The silence was absolute. No birds, no distant traffic, not even wind, just the faint ticking of my cooling engine and the tower waiting. "Perfect," I whispered, reaching for my camera bag. The equipment building was smaller than I'd expected, maybe 20 by 30 feet, with a single metal door facing east. The concrete walls were weathered but intact, with only a few instances of graffiti, surprising given its remoteness. Most were faded tags and crude drawings, but one caught my eye, a carefully rendered eye with a spiral pupil and the words "IT Listens" beneath it. "Creepy," I murmured, snapping a photo. The door was secured with a heavy padlock, but someone had pried open one of the small, wire-reinforced windows on the north side. I peered inside, seeing only darkness. With practiced movements, I fished out my headlamp, secured my camera, and hoisted myself through the window. The interior was disappointingly sparse, just a single room with a concrete floor and bare walls. A metal desk sat against one wall, drawers hanging open and empty. Cables snaked across the floor toward a large equipment rack that now held only dust. Someone had left a folding chair in the center of the room, facing a blank wall. "Strange, not much to see here," I said to my camera as I panned around, "but let's check out what's left." That's when I noticed the humming. It was so faint I initially mistook it for tinnitus, but as I moved toward the equipment rack, it grew slightly louder. A low, steady electrical hum that shouldn't have been present in a facility that had been powered down for over 30 years. I followed the sound to a small junction box mounted near the floor. Unlike everything else in the room, it looked newer, its metal casing free of rust. A single red LED glowed on its face. "That's odd," I said, crouching to examine it. "This place is supposed to be completely decommissioned." The box had no manufacturer markings, just a small government property tag with a series of numbers. A thick cable ran from it into the floor, disappearing through a neatly drilled hole in the concrete. My curiosity piqued. I searched the room more carefully and found a metal hatch in the floor behind the equipment rack. It wasn't locked, just heavy, and it took all my strength to pull it open. The hum grew louder. A set of metal stairs descended into darkness. I aimed my headlamp down but could only see about 15 feet before the beam was swallowed by the black. The air wafting up felt stale but not unpleasant, carrying a faint scent of ozone. "Well, this wasn't in any of the documentation," I told my viewers, making sure to capture the hatch in frame. "Looks like our simple relay station has a basement. Let's find out what's down there." In retrospect, that was the moment I should have left, packed up my gear, driven back to Reno, and found a new location to explore. But the promise of discovering something truly unknown was too enticing. The stairs descended about 30 feet before opening into a corridor that extended in both directions. Unlike the neglected building above, this area showed signs of maintenance. The concrete floors were swept clean, and fluorescent lights lined the ceiling, though they were currently off. My headlamp revealed doors along both sides of the corridor, each marked with stenciled numbers. I tried the nearest door, locked, as were the next 3 I attempted. The humming seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, a constant background presence that I was already beginning to tune out. I decided to follow it to the right, where the corridor extended about 50 feet before ending at a T-junction. The right passage led to more locked doors, but the left opened into what appeared to be a control room. Unlike the barren building above, this space was filled with equipment, banks of analog dials, switches, and monitors that looked straight out of the 1970s. Most were dark and silent, covered in a thin layer of dust, but one section glowed with life. A single console against the far wall was powered on, its vintage green phosphor monitor displaying a scrolling series of numbers and letters. Next to it, an old reel-to-reel tape recorder slowly turned, its mechanical counter advancing in hypnotic rhythm. The humming was loudest here, emanating from somewhere behind the active equipment. "This is incredible," I whispered, panning my camera across the room. "Some of this equipment has been running continuously since this place was supposedly shut down." I approached the active console, careful not to touch anything. The screen displayed what looked like a continuous data feed, strings of numbers and occasional blocks of text that scrolled by too quickly to read. The tape recorder beside it turned steadily, recording something. A pair of headphones hung on a hook beside the console. I hesitated, then picked them up, examining them. They were military-grade, heavy, and built to last. After a moment's consideration, I placed them over my ears. At first, nothing. Then faintly I heard it, a series of tones, followed by what sounded like a voice speaking numbers in a monotonous cadence. The signal was weak and overlaid with static, but unmistakably human. I listened for several minutes as the pattern repeated: tones, numbers, silence, repeat. A numbers station. I'd read about these, mysterious shortwave radio broadcasts that transmitted encoded messages, presumably to intelligence operatives in the field. They were relics of the Cold War, most having gone silent after the Soviet Union collapsed, but this one was still broadcasting and being recorded. I removed the headphones, my mind racing. Was this some forgotten government program left running through bureaucratic oversight, or something more deliberate? The room contained little else of interest: empty filing cabinets, a desk with a dusty telephone, a bulletin board with faded safety notices. But as I turned to leave, I noticed a door in the corner I'd overlooked. Unlike the others, this one had no number, just a red stripe painted across it. It was unlocked. Beyond lay a small room containing a single piece of equipment, a large metal cabinet, about the size of a refrigerator, humming steadily. The front panel featured dozens of small lights, most dark, but a row at the bottom glowed green. A thick bundle of cables ran from the cabinet into the ceiling. I approached, fascinated. The cabinet was clearly the power source for the active equipment in the control room, but it looked far too sophisticated for 1980s technology. Its design was sleek, almost contemporary, with touch-sensitive controls instead of physical switches. As I leaned closer to examine the panel, my headlamp illuminated a small logo I hadn't noticed, a stylized spiral surrounding what looked like an eye. The same symbol from the graffiti outside, a coincidence surely. Someone had seen the logo down here and reproduced it above. But why "it listens"? I reached out to touch the panel, curious about the interface. The moment my finger made contact, every light on the cabinet flashed red, and a high-pitched tone emitted from speakers I couldn't see. I jerked my hand back as if burned, but the damage was done. The tone continued for exactly 10 seconds, then stopped. The humming changed pitch, growing slightly higher. "Shit," I muttered, backing away. I didn't mean to. The lights in the corridor outside suddenly flickered on, harsh fluorescent illumination flooding through the doorway. From the control room came the sound of equipment powering up, fans whirring, drives spinning, switches clicking. My heart pounding, I hurried back to the control room to find every console now active, screens glowing with data feeds and status reports. The reel-to-reel had stopped, but the green monitor now displayed a single message: signal integrity compromised, initiating protocol echo. "What the hell?" I whispered, backing toward the corridor. Whatever I'd activated, I wanted no part of it. It was time to leave, to get back to my car and civilization and forget about this place. I turned to run and collided with someone standing directly behind me. I screamed, stumbling backward. The figure remained motionless, a man in what appeared to be a 1980s military uniform, his face expressionless. He was perhaps 50, with close-cropped gray hair and pale blue eyes that seemed to look through rather than at me. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice oddly flat, almost mechanical. "I'm sorry," I stammered. "I'm just an urban explorer. I didn't mean to disturb anything. I'll leave right now." The man tilted his head slightly, studying me. "You triggered the protocol. It was an accident. I just touched the panel. I didn't mean to. Intention is irrelevant. The signal has been compromised." He stepped aside, gesturing toward the corridor. "You will need to be processed." "Processed? No, look, I'm leaving right now." I moved to step around him, but he caught my arm with surprising strength. "That is no longer an option." His grip was like iron, his skin unnaturally cool through my jacket. As I struggled, I noticed something about his eyes. The pupils were slightly wrong, the black centers spiraling inward like tiny vortices, just like the symbol on the cabinet, just like the graffiti. With a surge of adrenaline-fueled strength, I wrenched free and sprinted down the corridor, not caring which direction I went as long as it was away from him. I could hear his measured footsteps behind me, unhurried but persistent. I turned a corner and found myself in a new section of the facility, a wide area with what looked like medical equipment. Gurneys lined one wall, next to cabinets of supplies. Everything was immaculately maintained, not a speck of dust anywhere. The footsteps grew closer. I ducked through another doorway and found myself in what appeared to be a dormitory, 6 beds with military precision corners, footlockers at their bases. Unlike the medical area, this room showed signs of abandonment, with dust covers over the beds and a stale smell in the air. A door at the far end offered escape. I raced toward it, yanked it open, and found myself facing a blank concrete wall. No, not blank. As my headlamp played across it, I saw it was covered in the same spiral eye symbol, hundreds of them etched into the concrete at different sizes, creating a disorienting visual field that seemed to pulse in the beam of my light. The signal must be maintained. I whirled to find the man standing in the doorway, his expression still unnervingly blank. Behind him, 2 more figures now stood, a woman in a lab coat and another man in military dress, both with the same empty expression and spiral pupils. "Who are you people?" I demanded, pressing my back against the carved wall. "What is this place?" "We are the custodians," the first man replied. "This facility maintains the signal." "What signal?" "The numbers station," the woman spoke, her voice carrying the same flat affect. "The signal is not for human ears. The numbers are merely a carrier." My mind raced, trying to make sense of their words. "A carrier for what?" "For us," said the third figure. "For what came through?" A cold dread settled in my stomach. "Came through from where?" Instead of answering, the first man gestured to the wall behind me. "The signal opened a door in 1952. We maintain it. We ensure it remains open." I glanced back at the wall covered in spiral symbols, understanding dawning with horrifying clarity. Not a wall, a door. "Or what was left of one. What came through?" I whispered. The woman's head tilted at an unnatural angle. "We did small pieces at first, writing the signal, then more. We learned to build suitable vessels." She gestured to her body. "These serve our needs. You're possessing them." My voice cracked. "These are constructs," the first man corrected. "Grown for purpose. The original staff served as templates." I thought of the medical area I'd passed, the immaculate equipment. They weren't treating people here, they were growing them. "The signal was stable," the third figure said. "For 70 years it has remained constant until you interfered. I just touched a panel." "I didn't do anything. Your presence is the interference," the woman said. "Human consciousness disrupts the carrier wave. That is why this facility was abandoned, why it was removed from records. Only the constructs can safely maintain it." The first man stepped forward. "Now the signal must be strengthened. A new carrier is required." I didn't like the way they were looking at me. "Stay back." "I'm leaving and I won't tell anyone about this place. You'll never see me again." "That is correct," the woman agreed, her lips curving in what might have been meant as a smile. "But part of you will remain. The signal requires it." They moved with sudden, coordinated speed. Before I could react, the men had seized my arms while the woman produced a syringe from her coat pocket. I fought wildly, kicking and thrashing, but their grip was inhumanly strong. "The procedure is not painful," the woman assured me as she approached. "Your consciousness will be used to strengthen the signal. Your body will be repurposed." The needle pierced my neck. A cold sensation spread outward and my limbs grew heavy. As my vision began to blur, I saw more figures entering the room, at least a dozen, all with the same blank expressions and spiral eyes. "The signal must be maintained," they chanted in unison, their voices merging into a sound uncomfortably similar to the hum that permeated the facility. Darkness took me. I awoke on one of the gurneys in the medical area, restrained at wrists, ankles, and forehead. My body felt strange, distant, and unresponsive, as if I were experiencing it through layers of insulation. I could move my eyes, but nothing else. The woman in the lab coat stood over me, checking monitors attached to my body by electrodes. When she saw my eyes tracking her, she made a note on a tablet. "Consciousness has reintegrated," she announced to someone out of my view. "Carrier wave is stabilizing." A man stepped into my field of vision, not one of the 3 I'd encountered before, but another construct with the same ageless quality and spiral pupils. "Can it hear us?" he asked. "Yes, the human consciousness remains partially intact. It will dissipate as the signal strengthens." The man leaned closer, studying my face. "You should not have come here, but your presence will serve a purpose. The signal will grow stronger with your contribution." I tried to speak, to scream, to make any sound at all, but my body refused to respond. I was a passenger in my own flesh, watching helplessly as they prepared to use me for whatever the signal truly was. "Begin the integration," the man ordered. The woman nodded and reached for something above my head. I heard a mechanical whir and a device lowered into view, a helmet-like apparatus with dozens of fine needles pointing inward. "This will connect you directly to the signal," she explained, as if I were a patient receiving standard treatment. "Your consciousness will be converted to carrier wave energy. What remains will be repurposed as a new construct." The helmet descended toward my face. I strained against the restraints with every ounce of will, but my body remained motionless. The needles touched my scalp, my forehead, my temples. Pain exploded through my skull as they penetrated, but worse than the pain was the sound that filled my mind, the humming, now impossibly loud, resolving into voices. Thousands of voices speaking in unison in a language that hurt to hear, and behind the voices something else, something vast and patient and hungry, waiting on the other side of a door that had been cracked open in 1952 and kept ajar by the signal ever since. I understood then what the facility truly was, not a relay station but a beacon, a lighthouse guiding something home. The voices grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. I felt my memories being sifted through, examined, and discarded. My identity dissolving like sugar in hot water. The last coherent thought I had was of my YouTube channel, of the video I'd been recording, of my camera which I'd dropped somewhere during my capture. I stand at the base of the Blackrock radio tower, watching as a dusty sedan approaches along the dirt road. The vehicle stops about 50 yards away, and a young woman emerges, camera bag slung over her shoulder. Her expression is eager as she surveys the tower. I check my watch, right on schedule. 2 more constructs emerge from the facility behind me, taking positions out of the visitor's immediate sightline. We have become more efficient since the last one. The integration of the previous explorer's consciousness enhanced our understanding of human behavior patterns. His memories told us about the online video that had drawn this new visitor, the lost footage, apparently recovered near an abandoned radio tower, showing only glimpses of underground rooms before cutting to static. The comments speculating about government conspiracies and supernatural phenomena. The challenge to brave urban explorers to find this place and discover the truth. The signal grows stronger with each new carrier. Soon it will be strong enough. I straighten my uniform and prepare to greet our guest. Behind me, the tower hums with purpose, broadcasting its message to what waits beyond. The door is opening wider, and we are helping it along, one curious explorer at a time. "Welcome to Blackrock. The signal must be maintained."